Welcome to the 5 on 5. We are pleased to be joined today by Yaschar Sarparast, an immigration law attorney. Yaschar, thank you so much for being here today.
You're welcome, thank you.
We've been seeing a lot of the headlines and a lot of the talk about, well, in Oregon and around the country, about sanctuary cities. First off, just start by giving us a little information about what a sanctuary city is.
So I use quotes to say sanctuary city or state because it's not really a legal term. In fact, it's not my preference to use that term because it implies something nefarious, as if to say local or state governments are hiding out undocumented individuals. That's not the case. What essentially it says or means is that, look, Oregon will not do the federal government's job for them. And in Oregon, statewide, there are essentially two types of these sanctuary city or state laws that I would describe. One is from 30 years ago, and which is still on the books, which states that local law enforcement does not have the ability, is prevented from asking about an individual's immigration status or investigating that issue. And then secondly, there is a law that was passed by the local legislature and signed by the governor recently, which states that our public bodies or agencies in this state cannot share personal identifiers or information regarding someone for purposes of federal immigration enforcement unless required by law.
Okay. What protections do they provide?
So without these types of protections, essentially what could happen is that local police, upon their discretion, could ask for someone's quote-unquote papers, and potentially based on someone's name, if it's like mine, or if it's their physical features, that's the potential risk that could arise. These protections really are important, I believe, because there's a number of things that they prevent. Number one, if they weren't in place, it would create a patchwork of policies where local police would choose to enforce these immigration issues if they wish or if they don't wish. So if you drove through one city, let's say in Medford, you could be detained and asked about this, for example, hypothetically. But if you drove through another city, like let's say Portland or Ashland, maybe you wouldn't be asked about this. So it doesn't create uniformity without these protections. In other words, the purpose of federal law being enforced by federal agencies is to have uniformity across states. Another issue is local police are going to have a hard time having the proper training to identify immigration documents and issues. Even us as lawyers cannot know it all. It's a very complicated field of law. Another thing that all local law enforcement agencies will tell you is that they need the cooperation of the individuals in their city. If witnesses and victims stop coming forward and cooperating because they're afraid that their immigration status could be shared with immigration, or they could be harassed about that, then that creates an issue with local criminal investigations. And then the other issue is that personally I believe it's a waste of our local tax dollars, giving our local agencies the authority to then sidetrack from vital and precious time that they have here going into immigration issues.
Now, working as an attorney on immigration cases, are there legal ramifications for either having sanctuary status or not having it?
I can't perceive any at this point in time, meaning there's no defense or form of relief that would be available to someone in their immigration context or application or court because of a policy, essentially, which a locality or a state has in effect. So I don't think there's much fear in that respect. I can't perceive anything.
Is it approved by the federal government, sanctuary status?
Because it's a policy issue, they don't need to approve it. I mean, it's not within their purview to approve it. But is it frowned upon? Certainly, it's adverse to the wishes of the current executive administration, in so that they're threatening to withhold certain funding.
And are all immigration cases held in federal court?
Let's say that if your case does happen to go to court, which not all do, then it is always in either federal court or federal immigration court. Otherwise, it's in some kind of federal jurisdiction, either through the Department of Labor, Department of Homeland Security, or some other, like Immigration Customs Enforcement, etc. Different federal agencies. You're correct. Nothing is within the purview, essentially, with very few exceptions, of local or state agencies. No.
Okay. And then working locally, can you estimate how many immigration cases are filed annually in Southern Oregon?
Oh boy, there's no way. I don't have that statistic.
Yeah.
But I can say, easily every year there's at least 1,000 or thousands, possibly, if you put together all the nonprofits and attorneys working here. Certainly that number is much larger in the bigger cities in Oregon.
Well, Yaschar, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate having you in studio.
You're welcome. Thank you.
We'll be right back.